doctors behaving badly. Of course, with the world is changing as healthcare, how can at some point all doctors are going to behave badly, because everything is changing under their feet, as we have talked about in previous CV summits. So I am here with the president of Austin Heart, and this is Matthew Phillips, MD. We have talked a couple of times in the past. In this case, you talked about how you became president of this group of about 50 docs, cardiologists, and when you first became president, what did you say to
Well, there was actually, just to be clear, there were 22, I believe, at that time, and had a vote. And I think the conversation we had one evening is, what are we going to be about? And because we never really had that conversation. And the conversation was, are we going to be the best group there is? Or are we going to be the best paid group there is? And there's a difference. And, a lot of physicians at a certain age make a lot of life mistakes. And my feeling was that I was more interested in being one of the best groups in the country. So I said to the docs, look, what do you all want? You have to give us direction. Do you want to be the highest paid or the best? You would hope the two would be the same, but they're not often. No. And as a result, they asked for a show of hands, and all 22 physicians said that as a goal going forward, they wanted to be set the standard in cardiac and vascular care, and when we made decisions, we would make decisions to meet that goal, as opposed to any true decision of financial performance. And that was a change.
I mean, this has all been changing in the last couple of years, and it's been very painful for doctors at every level. One of the things you talked about, too, in this session was that what you tolerate, you kind of promote.
Well, right. So, when you have so many people in so many locations, what can happen is if you don't define what's expected of individuals, and when I say individuals, I mean everyone, being the administrators, the physicians, so it's not just the physicians. If you don't define those expectations, it's a problem. Because sometimes if people don't know what they expected of you, or I don't know what's expected of me, how can I possibly perform? But in that range, you're going to have some behaviors that are clearly unacceptable. And if you don't address those behaviors, if you permit those behaviors to go on, you're promoting those behaviors. You're saying to the rest of the world, this person does this, it's acceptable. It's acceptable to not do your charts for a month, or it's acceptable to show up an hour and a half late for clinic. It's acceptable on the administrator side to not have adequate staff, to have equipment that doesn't work. We all have to decide what's acceptable, stick to that, and don't permit anything that's not acceptable.
I think you said also that when you finally do say goodbye to somebody, just because it's just not working out, you rarely say, gee, we should have given them more time. Yeah, it's usually, why didn't we do this a month ago?
Right. I mean, you don't want to make this all about, physicians and, not working out. But there's going to be a time. I mean, if you have a group of people that are on a certain path, some people are not going to be on that path with you. They don't agree, and that's fine. They may have different goals. But when you have two groups of people that disagree fundamentally on where the organization is going, there's endless conflict. And conflict causes stress. The emotional stress of that conflict is much greater than the professional stress we get taking care of patients. And so when you eventually realize, and I guess it's like in any relationship, I hate to say it, it's like a divorce. You get to a point where you realize it's time to move on, and when you actually make that decision, you realize, wow, I wish I'd done that sooner, because you just don't realize how much stress there is. So unfortunately, the times that that's happened, we realized that we accepted conflict for too long. And we don't want people to leave. It's not the right approach, but sometimes people disagree on where things are going.
The earlier you address it, the better.
I think as long as you make if you have it clearly defined what the organization culture is, and clearly define what the expectations are, so there's no mystery. And if there are people who say, I just don't want to do this, well, then you could have an unemotional conversation and say, look, we all agreed we're going down this path. We're very open about it. You don't want to go down this path, so how do we make this work for both of us?
One of the things you talked about was, this isn't doctors behaving badly, this is like bosses behaving badly, how Austin Heart just suddenly disappeared over the weekend on the internet.
Right, the IT folks on the leadership side made a mistake, and before they went home, when they moved servers, forgot to make sure that the new server worked. And so doctors on the weekend try to log in, and guess what? We don't exist anymore. And you call the help desk and they go, you don't know what you're doing, doctor, and they go, oops, we'll get back to you. And then, an hour later, each person, they had to create a whole new domain, but it basically delayed everyone's work for at least an hour. Well, you can't hold the physicians accountable for showing up on time, getting all their work done on time, and then when the leaders of those groups, the non-physicians, do things where they're not getting it done on time, you just say, okay, that's no problem. And so actually, the organization made the physicians whole for their waste of time on the weekend, because that shows accountability is both sides, both leadership and physicians.
And so you find them.
Yes, we find them. But it's fair. Well, that also sets the bar, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I mean, you said they wrote the check out fast. It's like,
right,
yep,
sure, it's a cheap
we
check.
screwed up.
Yeah, right. If you stand up and say, look, we're in this together, and we'll be accountable, and you're going to be accountable, it really makes it much more pleasant if everyone's on the same page. Because look, most of us, unfortunately, have nothing else to do. At least in my generation, we just work. And so it's great to come to work liking the place you work and enjoying your job. You don't want to come to work and be miserable. And a lot of people, unfortunately, can't retire. So if they got to work 10 years, even though they don't want to, at least it should be a place that they enjoy working at. So if you can get the conflict out of it, it makes everyone's happier.
By the way, you may be president, but you're not immune to the same kind of oversight.
Oh, sure.
Where are those records?
Right. I had problems with charts that, I see people in a small town, and I could see them, and I know them for 20 years, and, I could, when they come in instantly, I know what medicines they're on. Well, but it's a team sport, and my partners have to care for those patients sometimes when I'm not there. And if my last note is somewhat sparse, it takes them quite a bit of time to figure out what's going on, and that's not upholding my part of the bargain. And so as the president of the group, I was on the bad chart list for a while, and it actually helped me. I think, do a better job now, take more time, and I make sure that every note standalone can take care of the patient.
Well, the session that Dr. Matthew Phillips did here at the CV Summit was a very good one, and it is indeed part of our cover story for Cardio Source World News, where I'm Executive Editor Rick McGuire.